Welcome to A Lot of Fortune, a cosmic podcast with me, Danny Darling.
Hey, and I'm Natty.
And for this episode, we want to turn our attention to the lunar eclipse on August 28th at 12:12 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, for some of us, this will be happening late in the evening on August 27th, but we are at a point where we're at the close of a 2-year chapter that began on September 20th of 2024. And in September of 2024, we were met with uncertainty, civil unrest, global conflict, campaign season. After 2 years of navigating the nodal axis of Pisces and Virgo, here we are at the final Pisces eclipse. Under a blood moon, the night speaks of endings.
Yeah. I think I want to ping on this idea of ending because I often feel that often endings come along with eclipses. Um One of Chris Brennan's key phrases for eclipse season is major endings and major beginnings. And I often think about the sort of endings and beginnings that happen for me during eclipse season. And one thing that's popped up for me is that a couple weeks ago my therapist left that they were leaving their practice.
Mm,
And so next week I have my last session with my therapist. And it's really interesting is that I started with my therapist during eclipse season. And yeah.
wow.
Uh yeah. Yeah. And so that's something that I'm still processing. And
Mm-hmm.
um I also think about how I went to the office for my insurance agent for my car insurance because I needed to drop off a form. And I walked in and they said, "Oh, they retired. They're closed down today." So
Wow.
I'm just that's very eclipsy.
Oh my
But
goodness.
I know.
It's too
And so I had to
much.
spend a few minutes I know I had to spend a few minutes calling around to be okay, who takes care of this now? Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I got a letter or anything. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that happens during eclipse season. And
Mm-hmm.
I often think that oftentimes eclipse season isn't something that's super big. It's just these tiny little things. And I go back to every single eclipse season and there's something kind of like that that happens the previous eclipse season in the winter, I started my astrological practice.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody joined our team at work. And then the one when we had a Pisces eclipse, the Pisces Virgo eclipses a year ago, I got the option of going to part-time at my job, and then that allowed me to do my astrological practice. So it's like eclipses really do bring these endings and beginnings, and sometimes we expect it to be something super big, but sometimes it's just these little things that just change our lives a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I would invite people during eclipse season to really pay attention to what's going on because I often feel that it's a time of indeterminacy where the sort of rhythms of our life get shifted or turned upside down in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we don't recognize how they will be significant until afterwards. And I've been telling myself this eclipse season just to ride the wave, to let the changes happen rather than initiate them. So I'm just when we get that new moon in Virgo after eclipse season's done, then I'll start consciously cleaning up the mess and and it'll be
Absolutely.
a new moon in Virgo, So
Yep. We love a
uh,
mess.
we love a mess. We love cleaning them up. I mean, we talked about it last time about
We
how our
did.
Virgo moon cleaned it up. So, yeah, just pay attention to what shifted and what's gotten upended and jostled a little bit. And then maybe with this new moon in Virgo, think that's coming up at the beginning of September, think about, oh, well, what needs to be tidied up now that we've had this little bit of a mess. And I often consider the first new moon after the eclipses to be like the official reset after eclipse season.
Mm,
So just take these last couple weeks of eclipse season to just like pay attention. Maybe don't necessarily make any moves, and then just see where you land.
absolutely.
We have a Pisces eclipse coming up, and we're about to share a clip from the last episode that we recorded, but didn't make it into the episode because we wanted to save it for this one. And it'll be about where we break down the Pisces eclipse. And again, this is a full moon eclipse in the first decan of Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we'll talk about what that decan means. It'll be conjunct the fixed star Fomalhaut.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it will be ruled by Jupiter and Leo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it'll be square
Uranus.
Uranus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we meant because we've been talking about this like square to Uranus, and it'll
Absolutely.
be just after a Mercury Cazimi.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so those are just like a little bit of facts about the eclipse. So
On Friday, August 28th, we have a different chart to consider.
yeah, it's quite a different chart. We switch from an eclipse in the fixed modality,
Mm-hmm.
with a fixed ascendant, to an eclipse in the mutable modality with a mutable ascendant. But we also are moving into um a an out of sign eclipse where like the node and the moon are in different sign boundaries. And I often say that like physics does not respect sign boundaries. So uh physically, and if we think about like the what's going on with like the position of like the moon and the sun and the earth in between, the earth that's blocking out the moon doesn't really care that there's a sign boundary there.
Right,
So even though the node and the moon are in different signs, they're still only about 5 degrees apart.
right.
So that's close enough to be an eclipse.
Yeah, and so that's the interesting part about the mixed eclipse thing. It's so messy.
Yeah, yeah.
you don't get you don't get the axis, the neat, okay, Leo, Aquarius, and this is interesting because with this cycle of the Virgo Pisces axis, which we're moving slowly out of now that the north and south nodes are in Aquarius and Leo, there's been this the eclipse cycle had 4 Virgo eclipses and 3 Pisces eclipses, and this is the last one in Pisces. So it almost to me was something a little bit significant that there was more Virgo with the South Node than more Pisces. And to me, it just I had a good handle on what that axis meant with those eclipses, you know, Virgo being the relinquishing the need to just fix everything, and Pisces allowing more of a compassionate, allowing for flow and to just kind of, I always said, to move from fixing to forgiving. And so I think, but now that we have a solar eclipse in Leo and then Pisces. What does that give? You know?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely indicates like highlights the transition between the nodal axis and stuff. Um, but it definitely says that like something is wrapping up about that Virgo Pisces story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think in terms of the Virgo and Pisces eclipses, we still have one more Virgo. Virgo will
Yeah,
have the last
yeah.
day in
Do
February. The Virgo eclipse had the initial eclipse in Virgo and the final. So I think I think it's just telling the way it all falls that we do still have something to work out and complete even after this Pisces lunar eclipse in the realm of the Virgo themes and the South Node being out of Virgo, but us finishing up that storyline, you know?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think another thing that like I wanted to name is that the two eclipses that we will be having in the winter, in January and February, the 12th part of both of those will be in Virgo.
Mm,
So, this Virgo, we're not done with the Virgo work.
not at all. As a Virgo moon, we know there's still work to be
We
done.
know, and it never and it never ends. And like Virgo kind of loves having a mess to clean up.
Yeah, it's like, honey, we always have edits.
We always have edits.
You give us another round, we can go. We can go. So with
Yeah.
this eclipse, though, that's coming up on the 28th, like you said, we have Gemini at the helm. And so if we're looking at the modality to look at the lunation and the way the effects are felt, then this is mutable. So we're moving into feeling the effects before the lunation and feeling the effects after the lunation. So more of a fade in, fade out situation of this Pisces eclipse. And I kind of love it. The fact that the moon is going to be, you know, in Pisces at 4 degrees, and let's see, none of the outers are at 4 anymore. But I think it's interesting that the moon is about memory and Pisces is about you know, having that spiritual and that wisdom and expansion of Jupiter. And I think it will kind of recall some of what's happened in the summer at 4 degrees with all those planets in July.
Yeah, totally. That this full moon, sorry, this eclipse, it will be sextile Uranus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really interesting to me. I mean, sorry, not sextile, square Uranus.
Yeah.
So,
What's that gonna? Woo. That's a lot.
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm just kind of like, wow, that is going to be a lot. I mean, I'm a Gemini sun, so I'm just looking at that Uranus and reacting to what the possibility of that square is. There's a square from Uranus to the sun in Virgo,
Hmm.
so that will be interesting. I think there's going to be something to be said about where our mentality is, where we are in terms of new ideas, new inspiration, new enlightenment, and the ways that that is going to maybe push us towards more understanding, more, hopefully, more compassion, and also hopefully more service and effort for each other, you know.
Yeah, 100%. I, I think when we get into like the nitty-gritty of some of the significations
Mm-hmm.
about that first decan, about the fact that this full moon eclipse will be conjunct the fixed star Fomalhaut, you can really see a lot of these spiritual themes, but also these real kind of humanitarian themes like come about.
Mm-hmm. What do you know about the star? What's it? What is it? How do you say it?
It's
Foma?
called Fomalhaut. I can spell it. It's a fixed
Yes.
star.
Uh-huh.
It is spelled. I don't want to like butcher the spelling. I have my Bernadette Brady here, but it's spelled
Uh-huh.
Fomalhaut.
Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you said
Fomalhaut.
it's a Fomalhaut. Yeah, that makes it come together in my mind. Yes. And what's this? Do you know what the significations are of that star?
Yeah, so I'll just read from Bernadette
Mhm.
Brady. So it's close to the Aquarius constellation. Um and so it's close to the Aquarius, and basically it's this image of like this fish at you see the Aquarius figure turning, pouring their water,
Yeah, yeah.
and then there's a fish is catching it in their mouth. Uh, and so it is part of that constellation that it's called the Southern Fish that's like catching it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so uh, this is considered one of the royal fixed stars, and it is said to be of the nature of Venus and Mercury, which is really interesting. And I I want to put a pin on that, but it is located right now at 5 degrees of Pisces. And um I don't know if you want to get into the decans, stuff like that, because I think it really does like flow together like super rich.
Yeah, let's get into the decan.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. So Pisces 1 is Austin Coppock calls it the labyrinth.
Mm.
T. Susan Chang calls it the farthest shore.
Hmm.
Me with my words.
No, you're
Uh, uh, Kira Reiberg calls it divine discontent.
fine.
First decan of Pisces is ruled by Saturn in the Chaldean scheme and Jupiter in the triplicity scheme. So, oftentimes I like Kira Reiberg's name for it for like divine discontent, and it corresponds to the Eight of Cups. And like in that, you see a figure with a walking stick who's walking away, and it's sort of like this vibe of like, oh, my present reality isn't fulfilling enough.
Mm-hmm.
And the Saturnian aspect comes in the sense that like, oh, our mundane reality is kind of confining.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Saturn can represent walls,
Boundary.
confinement,
Mm-hmm.
prisons, and Jupiter often points to like this desire for spiritual transcendence. So it has this vibe of like wanting to move beyond mundane reality to tap into something that's a little bit deeper. And it often has this vibe of wanting to peer past the veil or like deconstruct the limiting frames of consensus reality and get into a deeper truth. And I really, really love the overlap thematically between this decan and the fixed star Fomalhaut. And I wrote a little bit about this decan previously. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I must have it pulled up somewhere. Um, I really, really like Ellie Higgins' work on this decan. Ellie talks about how um, James Baldwin had Fomalhaut conjunct, had Mars Fomalhaut conjunct natally. But Kira Reiberg describes over on her patron page on her website, Fomalhaut translates specifically to the mouth of the southern fish or mouth of the whale. Whales are the biggest animals on Earth, and the blue whale can have a mouth up to 20 feet long. This tells us something about the nature of Fomalhaut. He deals in the enormity that lurks beneath the surface and is only seen when he wants to be, just like whales. While we do not know the precise reason why whales jump out of the water, it's thought to be a form of communication. Fomalhaut connects us to the great and mystical waters that underpin our existence, but as whales are largely unseen, the effects of this star can feel harder to pinpoint or identify from the outside. The experience of Fomalhaut is thus largely an internal one, especially when compared to the royal star Regulus, who is easier to spot from a distance. And during this time, the South Node is close to Regulus, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But I
What's interesting about that, those decan rulers, is that Saturn is trining Jupiter, or Jupiter is trining
oh wow,
Saturn.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there's a harmony there.
Mhm.
And even with that Uranus square, it may feel like the urge or the impulse to have that Eight of Cups moment of needing to move to the edge, move to the boundaries or beyond, is could be maybe a little disorienting, maybe a little disruptive. Um, it's just it's interesting that the Saturn will be in the 11th in this chart. Society, well wishers, friends in high places, and then it's trining Leo in the third, our immediate environment, the mind. So I think um, it'll be something will be said of the way we'll need to incorporate. And again, we're looking at the completion of this Pisces, all of the eclipses in Pisces kind of rolling out its final say, its final messaging. And I think incorporating it into really integrating it into our everyday experience, and the way it's Jupiter's in Leo, the way that we allow wisdom to illuminate us. And I think that'll be, I think I kind of get good vibes, even with the Uranus square. It feels dreamy.
Mhm.
Anytime we have a Pisces moon eclipse, it feels like, ultimate dreamy vibes. So, and it's going to be happening at the Aries 12th part, the moon,
Mhm.
which subsequently puts the sun at the Libra 12th part. So again, we've got that Aries influence, and Aries has Saturn and Neptune. And so we'll be still looking at that idea of idealism and, progress. Where are we with that by then? It's only a couple weeks from there. So,
So Venus is in the third decan of Libra,
mhm,
and the sun, the 12th part of the sun is in the third decan of Libra. And this is a decan that's about like um well, you've sort of been to like both ends of the of the spectrum, you've tried everything out. You've had that experience. Like it's Jupiterian, so it's about the wisdom that comes through the experience of being of having inhabited extremes. And to me, that suggests like that there is a degree of like wisdom and perspective that's come from this. And I think it's reinforced by the fact that like this is the sort of like closing time of this Pisces eclipse.
yeah.
Um, um, I love the way that Ellie Higgins frames Fomalhaut.
Mhm,
Uh, Ellie calls it like the river underneath the river.
mm,
And I want to read something. So, um, Ellie says that the river under the river, which is associated with Fomalhaut, that's sort of like Ellie's name for it, invites us to go beyond the surface level of comprehension and access the deeper, often hidden layers.
mhm,
For me, this points to like this idea of interconnectedness, which is very Jupiterian, which is very Piscean.
yeah.
And there's this component where there's this recognition that like Ellie points out is that like all of our struggles are interconnected. We are connected within these wider systems, and um, being able to take this wider view of like everything that's connected, which is very Jupiterian, shows how like systems of oppression impact people,
Yeah.
and by recognizing our interconnectedness, we
Mhm,
can both understand the ways that these Saturnian structures are unjust,
mhm,
but we can also have this view of like, okay, what does healing look like? What
yeah.
does unification look like?
Mhm,
And yeah, there's so much that I could say about these decans,
yeah.
but yeah, it's an incredibly rich space, and I really love talking about like the early decans of the mutable signs.
Oh.
Um, First decan of Virgo.
Mhm,
I often felt that like these themes of like spiritual bypass showed up,
mhm,
where like the North Node is this hunger. I feel that like Pisces one can often speak about spiritual escapism of like wanting to leave the world behind and
mhm.
like wanting to inhabit the space of spirituality.
Right.
And I think that like this eclipse might point to the ways in which like we can seek spirituality to escape from the world.
Yeah.
But I think that like Ellie Higgins's discourse on Fomalhaut is pointing to this river underneath the river that exposes
Mm.
structures in society that like having this deeper understanding does actually have a richer social obligation with it.
Yeah.
But I also think about how like the South Node in the first decan of Virgo, oftentimes the first decan of Virgo has this vibe of like humbly showing up for the day-to-day facets of life of just doing the work, you know?
Hmm.
And oftentimes like the South Node can be about escape. So it's like are we escaping from the rules because we are leaning into spiritual practice, because we're leaning into rituals, because we're leaning into our daily routines? And I think that like this is going to be an eclipse that might sort of highlight the ways in which astrology can be a means of escape, spirituality can be a means of escape, or
Absolutely.
just simply private individualism can be a means of escape.
Hmm.
And I think that this is something that I also saw with the nodes being in Pisces and Virgo. So I think that was something that I also wanted to highlight. But
Yeah.
also the fact that it's ruled by a Mercury
Hmm.
that is in its own bound, that just finished a Cazimi. So the new moon eclipse was in Mercury's bound. So um, I also find that an interesting overlap.
Yeah, it's like it circles back to that Eight of Cups, right? The way that you can kind of wander off into like this inundative state with spirituality. And I mean, I do this hyper focus on astrology when I'm like feeling stressed about other things, and it is definitely a form of disassociation in some aspects. So I think even with the Eight of Cups being that decan card, it speaks to navigating how much do we do this, how much are we, and how much should we. And that really, it's a lot. And Virgo is having a strong say and shining some light on the matter, something that's going to be a little bit more clear, something that's going to be a little bit more precise. So I think that'll be really good, and maybe like precise and very like jarring even, because look at the Uranus square. So
Mhm.
I think it'll
Yeah.
all be interesting.
Yeah.
So, what do you think, Natty darling? What was any lingering thoughts or any additions that you had to our delineations of the Pisces lunar eclipse?
Yeah, yeah. I think this sort of idea that's like presented by this first decan of Pisces, and I talked about how like I really like Kira Ryberg's name for this decan,
Mm-hmm.
Divine Discontent.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think this eclipse, Jolly Knot talks about how like North Node lunar eclipses often bring this birth that like feels premature. So like I'm wondering like what's going to come into our lives that might signal a kind of like transcendent receptivity where like we are getting some kind of transmission, especially because it's square Uranus. Like what sort of like insight do we get? And it's coming off of a Mercury Cazimi.
Right.
Um, and so I would really underline this theme of like receptivity. Like what is coming into our lives? What are we what sort of like cosmic downloads are coming into our lives?
Absolutely.
And really just try to sit with that. Yeah, I think that's what I would underline. What about you, Danny?
Well, in my mind, I think that this is a fully loaded full moon eclipse. The transits that are like woven into the fabric of this lunation kind of tells a story. I love stories. So, with Jupiter and Leo as the dispositor, it brings to mind the great magician Merlin in my mind, who was sort of a silent puppeteer behind the story of the lore behind young King Arthur at the Sword and the Stone. And
Mhm.
it was Merlin who placed the sword Excalibur, in some versions, into the stone that only the true heir could remove. So we're coming off this solar eclipse in Leo. Now we're into this Piscean energy where the sun in Virgo is heralding, telling a story, sending a message. So the Virgo sun with Mercury in that Kazemi is kind of telling a story of like purpose in the face of conflict. And Jupiter doesn't witness this full moon. And Jupiter has a half hearted help coming from the fallen Saturn in Aries, which is what reminds me of the young king that has a lot to accomplish. We have this Mars Saturn square. And at the point where Arthur pulls the sword from the stone, he then inherits a war torn England. He has 11 kings to defeat, and his work is cut out for him, as is ours. But there is a theme that with wisdom and guidance, strong effort and devotion, you have the Jupiter Saturn trine. There can be some surprises and plot twists, like the Uranus square, that bump us into the right timeline. You know what I'm saying? So that was my kind of thought.
Yeah, I really, really like that. Um, I it's bringing a lot of thoughts to mind.
Mm-hmm,
I One thing that I get from Kelly Surtees is that like if we look at a lunation,
mm-hmm,
we we look at the dispositor of the lunation and see what derived house it is in relation to the lunation. So
mm-hmm.
if we think of Pisces as the first house, Jupiter would be in the sixth house in Leo.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me really speaks to what you were saying about how like we kind of have to work to establish something, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And there is like support, you know? We
Mm-hmm.
got that Jupiter Saturn trine,
Mm-hmm.
and Jupiter is in the second decan of Leo, which is often about like the triumph that comes from like having been established. And I think that sort of speaks to what you're, I mean, it is like a very royal decan, so we're talking about like King Arthur, you know?
Yep.
And and but again, it's that Saturn in
Mm-hmm.
Aries, so it's just like we're still establishing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we got that like again, I'm just like reiterating what you were saying, but we do got that that fallen Mars, that square
Mm-hmm.
Saturn that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes like a Mars Saturn square kind of has this vibe of like a roadblock or just like something that just feels like really stern and harsh. So it's like we have support, something is like moving forward, but we're in this sort of context where it's like something may feel blocked. And I don't know if it relates to like this fact that like, oh, this eclipse season has really wiped us out a lot. Like, how do we pick up
Mm-hmm.
the pieces?
Yeah.
But I also think about how like Saturn and Aries has a hard time establishing itself. And
Yep.
that's something that like you spoke to as well.
Absolutely. And so that's the eclipse season in a nutshell. We have a mixed eclipse season, and this eclipse, as we were talking about the visual aspect of it last time, with like there being a black hole in the sky with the solar eclipse, now we have a blood moon. And
Mm.
so I think whatever wherever we find ourselves at the moment of that lunation, I think, just taking it in, seeing the visual of it is a really auspicious experience and definitely worth staying up for if you can.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I got an invite to a full moon bonfire and I have to work the following morning, but I'm just like, maybe I will just stay up and then just like have like a
Just go.
sleepless Saturday, you know? I only work for 5 hours on Saturdays.
And you
Um,
only live once. Okay.
and you only live once. Um, yeah, absolutely. I think there was like one other thing that like I wanted to highlight,
Mm-hmm.
and the Sun and Mercury during this. I mean, we just came off this Cazimi,
Mm-hmm.
And the Sun and Mercury during this are in the first decan of Virgo. And the first decan of Virgo, it corresponds to the Eight of Pentacles. And we think about the person on their workbench, like working on their eight pentacles, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like this decan is often associated with this idea of humility. And like if we think of like the Virgo Pisces axis, they are both nocturnal signs, they are yin signs. So there's this theme of like receptivity, and it's like Virgo exercises receptivity by not trying to like impose an order on things. Virgo sort of like is really simply attuned to like the way things are. It like refines and like um shapes things because it is attuned to like natural cycles. And like this is a deck that's often associated with like cultivation and um like when we are cultivating something, we really want to like pay attention to like the natural laws. And like the deity associated with the first decan of Virgo is Themis, which is associated sort of like with like the natural laws. And like I often think about how like I have like a few plants and like I notice that like I have not really ever learned much about like taking care of plants. But like I have a Virgo stellium and like my plants look gorgeous.
Of
Like
course
I
they
don't know,
do.
I just like I just notice I just notice when they're not like feeling good, you know? And like Virgo like has this like receptivity to like just like how things should be. And
Mm-hmm.
uh it's we simply like don't impose an order on things. We honor what things are in order to bring out. And it makes me think of like that was it like Michelangelo where like they talked about how like David is you find David in the slab of marble and you just like chip away everything that isn't that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like one thing that we're invited to do is just simply um find what's there and maybe just sort of like like take away what doesn't belong. Like
Mm-hmm.
just tidy up, you know? That's all we need to do
Yeah.
is tidy up.
Tidy up.
And Uranus, we don't know what kind of wild cards are going to be thrown in with Uranus in the mix.
Nope.
So yeah, just be humble before what this eclipse season is like pushing in front of us. And
Absolutely.
uh at the new moon, we'll know what our mission is by that point, you know?
Yes. And you'll definitely be hearing from us about the new moon and the lunar cycle in our next episode, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So, with that being said, thank you for joining us on A Lot of Fortune, and we will see you all next time. Bye.
Take care, everybody.